Along the borders of Ohio and Kentucky, you will find the communities of Ceredo and Kenova, two small West Virginia towns separated by a railroad track, but connected by a shared school and a history of dominance on the gridiron.
And there will be your single-A state champs for West Virginia this year, the Ceredo-Kenova Wonders. I tell you what, George, that is a tremendous single-A football team.
Well, probably if you were ever going to rob a store or do something bad, Friday night would have been the night to do it.
Everybody talked about them on the streets. Everybody, you know, we went to Clocks to get our hair cut, and we were talking about Ceredo-Kenova football.
And about 5:30, about 2 hours before the game, that place was packed. I mean, shoulder to shoulder, people in line waiting for tickets, people standing around talking, and you know, people supported you, especially when you're winning.
I used to, and some other people used to say, if you were a burglar, you would have a lot of success in Ceredo and Kenova because there's nobody home on a game night.
CK High School technically claimed its first state title in 1928, during the days when the state sports writers selected its champions. But the dominance on the field really didn't begin until Coach Carl Ward took over the helm for the Wonders in 1960. Along with his assistant coach and friend, Dale Craycraft, Ward would lead the Wonders to 244 wins and just 61 losses in 28 seasons. When Ward finally stepped down as the head coach following the 1988 season, he had won 10 West Virginia Class AA state titles and established the Wonders as the premier football program in the Mountain State.
There was a standard at CK. There was a football standard, and people expected championships.
We have had so much success with Coach Ward and Coach Craycraft, and I think 10 state championships.
Take Notre Dame in collegiate football. There's tradition at Notre Dame, how big that is, how strong that is. Well, that's how I felt CK football was.
Thinking back growing up in Ceredo-Kenova, gosh, I still want to be Chuck Felty or John Fannin, those guys. But back when we were younger kids, Ceredo-Kenova was just dominant.
However, following Ward's departure and a dip in the area's population, the Wonders experienced a bit of a step back, dropping down to Class Single A and missing the playoffs in 1989 and 1990 under Ward's replacement, Coach Larry Heck. In 1991, the Wonders were once again looking for a new coach. This time, the school turned to one of Ward's former players, Don Money, to take the helm and restore Ceredo-Kenova's football supremacy within the state.
Coach Money had great experience. He had coached at Fort Gay, and he'd coached at other places. He had a lot of experience, and he was a CK guy. He'd been a great athlete at CK back in the early 70s for Coach Ward, and he had the fever, I would say, to kind of get things going again.
I tried to model. Of course, I couldn't do as well as what he did, but I tried to model after Coach Ward. We got the kids in the weight room, got started lifting, and we added some other things, some plyometric work. But the plays that we ran were the same plays that the coach had ran years past. So the things that I had learned from him is pretty much what I tried to copy. And like I said, not as well, but that was my goal, to try to do the things that I did when I played for him and helped coach.
So when we were in the weight room lifting, he was lifting with us. I mean, and I can remember putting 225 on the bar and just doing it like it's, 12, 15 times in a row. And, we're looking over there, it's like, he led by example, and he motivated us by being there with us.
In Coach Money's first season, the Wonders missed the playoffs for a third consecutive year. But In 1992, the Ceredo-Kenova Wonders would finish the season 7-3 and make a return to the playoffs before being promptly ousted in the first round by Mount Hope 22-8. Still, it was a step in the right direction, and in 1993, Money and his Wonders would take another step toward returning Ceredo-Kenova to the state title picture.
They had a very humble start when he got going with CK, but little by little, they kept winning more and more and more.
We had gradually gotten better each year. We went from freshman year being 5-5 to, working our way up to the semifinals.
Junior year, we only had 4 seniors on the team that year. So we were all mostly juniors, a couple sophomores that played. We played our first playoff game at Lavely Field on Marshall Stadium. We played Peterstown. We won that game 8-3. That's the first playoff victory, I think, since '83.
The Wonders started the 93 season with 8 consecutive wins, including a 19-0 victory to another perennial power in the Mate 1 Tigers. But Ceredo-Kenova would stumble in its last 2 regular season games to Wayne and Fayetteville high schools. Many felt as if the Wonders were backing into the playoffs, but victories in the first 2 rounds against Peterstown and Mount Hope would set up a rematch against the Tigers in the state's semifinals.
We played Mate 1 during the regular season at Mate 1, dry field, beat them 19-0.
So they had good athletes. They were a good, solid, traditional team like CK. We went in there my junior year and beat them, and they had some kind of big streak at home, hadn't been beat. We beat them, and we had to get on the bus and get out of there.
This time, however, the Wonders would have to go back to Mate 1 without star tailback Bub Taylor. And they would also be playing on a field soaked in rain. The mud bogged down both offenses, and the game quickly turned into a defensive slugfest. When the clock hit all zeros in the fourth quarter, the Tigers had managed to land just enough blows to hand the Wonders a 12-8 loss, ending CK's run at a championship. Adding insult to the loss was the fact that just a week later, Mate 1 would go on to win the 1993 state title, defeating the Valley Lumberjacks 21-13, leaving the Wonders feeling as if they had missed an opportunity.
In '93, we were probably the best team in the state. We lost Bub at Williamson to a broken ankle, and then had a hard time kind of rebounding from that, but we got back on track. We went down there, played in a rainstorm, and we were by far a better football team.
Going back in there for the semifinals was tough. In the mud, I'm on the sidelines, I can't play.
I mean, it's raining. It rained all day long. It rained the whole game, and the field obviously was grass, and it was muddy, and it was just, it's one of those games that probably wouldn't be played today, to be honest. And they ended up beating us 12-8. And I really think maybe their size, they were big. Their size in that mud, I think, obviously gave them a little bit of an advantage.
It was very disappointing. I can remember like it was yesterday, and the mud was so deep that our shoes, when you walked on the sidelines, it was all the way, the mud was over your shoes. So there was no throwing the football. We couldn't grip the ball. It was hard to run. And we got beat in a close game.
Getting close in 1993 grew the confidence of Ceredo-Kenova's returning players and served as motivation for the team in the offseason leading up to 1994. For 8 months, everyone associated with the Wonders football program had one thought and one purpose for the upcoming season: finish the job by winning a state title.
And I think after we lost that game, the kids, they were determined. They lifted hard, they worked hard in the offseason.
I remember that offseason going into '94, you talk about dedication. You talk about kids that They had the goal in their eyes. They had that championship trophy in their eyes and in their goal, and they worked their tails off that year. I mean, the weight work was amazing. The conditioning was amazing.
When we lost that game, we felt like that was one that we shouldn't have lost. And it was our entire motivation the next year. You know, there's an ongoing joke. We would scream mate one after we were done with every rep.
Ever since the previous game, that was the next time we got to get on the field. We felt that loss. That sting was still there. Every time that it was 107 degrees or something, we wanted to make sure that we were still out working mate one. We were in the weight room. We were on the field doing whatever it took to get better. And so we just knew that we were a better team, so we just had to go out and prove it.
As fortune would have it, the Wonders wouldn't have to wait long to get a shot at proving it. They opened the 1994 season at home against the defending champs. CK wasted no time getting on the board. Just 46 seconds into the game, the Wonders running back Bub Taylor took a toss left and used his speed to outrace the Tiger defense to the end zone. Just like that, CK was up 6-0. Mate 1 seemed prepared to answer. The Tigers picked up a first down on their first offensive play, but a fumble on the very next play would be recovered by the Wonders. CK quickly made Mate 1 pay for the mistake. A median gain from Taylor was followed up by a first down reception by Travis Jenkins. 3 plays later, Dale Billen would punch it in from 1 yard out to put the Wonders ahead 14-0.
Honestly, it was a shock at first because, just speaking for myself, when we came out of the locker room, Mate 1 looked like a college football team. They were massive. Sid Cisco, I remember seeing him. He was like 6'7", like 330. It looked like WVU coming out of the tunnel, and we were like, we're going to have our hands full. But when we got to playing, we were so much faster than them. I remember like in the very first series, we could hear them breathing very heavy across from us.
They couldn't catch us. Whether we threw it or we ran or whatever we did, they just couldn't catch us. They were still big as they were the year before. They'd lost a few skilled kids, but not a whole lot. I mean, they had a really good team. But to come out 33-0 first game of the year, going into it, there's a lot of unknowns. They beat us last year. They have these guys back. Well, we got these guys back. And, it was kind of eye-opening, I think, not just for us, but just also for them and for the rest of the state that CK's pretty good this year. We were good last year. We're even better this year.
We didn't need no pep talk. We were fired up. We were ready. We were ready. We knew what they were doing. They knew what we were doing. But the thing was, we were so balanced, you couldn't key on one thing.
Well, it was like if you put the team that was already the best in the state and you put a chip on their shoulder. Like they kept thinking somebody was going to show them something. And so they beat everybody like they were their rival. Every game we played, it was like it was an arch enemy. So it was like you blew a whistle and someone said, sick 'em. And that's what we did for 14 games.
CK would dominate the defending champions on both sides of the ball, cruising to a 33-0 victory and sending a message to the rest of West Virginia that the Wonders were for real.
How sweet was that? 33-0. You got Coach Kinder, and he has guys still on that team that are really good, really talented. Well, it was a sign of things to come because the Wonders shut them out and shut them down.
Blew them out 30-0. You got to realize we beat them 30-0 before halftime.
We had that bad taste in our mouth the entire offseason, so to come out and blow them out, looking back on it, I'd say, yeah, it did set the tone for the season.
Over the next 6 weeks, Ceredo-Kenova continued to blow out the opposition, putting up historic numbers along the way in games that were most often decided by halftime.
Coach Money wouldn't let us play in third and fourth quarters, you know. And I agree with him on that, because any injury at any point would have been devastating for our team. So I agree with him on the not just blowing a team out 16, 70 to nothing. We could have done that all season long, you know.
If you were a CK Wonder, if you were wearing that green and white uniform in 1994, you're going to get the game because everybody got to play, because the starters would roll up these big scores, and no wonder everybody was happy, because everybody played. Everybody got a chance to get on the field, hit somebody, run the ball, catch the ball, throw the ball, and it made for a happy team and a happy fan base.
But in the 8th game of the year, the Wonders would face their stiffest test of the season, the Wayne Pioneers. Wayne, a Class AA team that had handed the Wonders one of their 3 losses in 1993, rolled into Ward Craycraft Stadium unshaken by CK's history, its record, or the blowout victories. The Wonders got on the board about midway through the first quarter with a long Taylor TD run down the near sideline. Billum added the 2-point conversion to give CK an 8-0 lead. For much of the game, the Pioneer defense would use a combination of size and physicality to impose its will on the Wonders offense. CK's high-scoring attack was thrown out of rhythm, and uncharacteristic miscues like turnovers and penalties negated whatever progress the team managed to make. Then, late in the second quarter, Billum would take a handoff from Ball, make a hard cut off a block by Taylor before breaking into the open field on his way to a 38-yard touchdown that gave the Wonders a 2-score advantage at the halftime break.
The Wayne game was homecoming. I mean, we were just coming off our game at Williamson, which we won 40-14, I believe. And we had some injuries that night at the Williamson game. Had a few concussions. Some guys didn't play. So we go into the Wayne game. Wayne's not as good as the previous year, but they're still Wayne.
You could have heard a pin drop at halftime during that game. Yeah. But Wayne always had tough kids. I mean, anytime you played Wayne, you knew it was going to be a tough game.
In the second half, CK still couldn't quite put it together offensively. But while the Wonders' offense was sputtering, the CK defense was playing as good as it had all year. Every Wayne ball carrier was met by a swarm of green jerseys, and the Pioneers managed just a handful of first downs, never really threatening to score. By the time Billum scored his second touchdown of the game with 11 minutes to play, it felt as if the score was already well out of reach. The Pioneers had presented somewhat of a challenge for the Wonders, forcing its starters to play until the final moments of the ball game. But in the end, the outcome was never really in doubt. CK's dominating defense had pitched its 4th shutout of the year, and the Wonders moved to a perfect 8-0 on the season.
Final score, Ceredo-Kenova 20, Wayne nothing. Thanks for coming, Wayne.
It tested their will, that's for sure, because up to that point, I think that, most of the games, they were over at halftime. And I think after that game, it probably woke some kids up, thought, hey, we better be ready to play each and every week.
Over the next couple of weeks, the Wonders would pick up 2 more blowout wins and 2 more shutouts, moving the team to 10-0 and securing CK's first undefeated regular season in exactly 20 years. But to the players, coaches, and community, regular season victories meant very little in Ceredo-Kenova. The all-time great teams were measured by championships. So as the Wonders got ready for a first-round playoff matchup with Parkersburg Catholic, the focus was clearly on winning a state title.
It was strange. I don't think it sunk into us until maybe the playoffs, because we went into every game with a plan A, B, and C, trying to cover every base. But it turned out all we needed was plan A. I mean, they attacked sometimes I would feel sorry for other teams. You know, I knew what they were doing wasn't going to work. And I knew they had no idea how deeply this team wanted to win.
I can remember riding on the bus. Eric Sparks and I were planning out what we're going to listen to pregame. And the Eagles, A Heartache Tonight. You know, Eric had to have that on there because we felt like there was going to be some heartbreaking going on because we were going to get after it. We were a little bit cocky because we outworked them and we could be.
CK dominated the Crusaders, outmatching them across the field for an easy 38-7 victory, and round 2 would go much the same way as the Wonders would roll over a 10-win East Hardy squad 42-8, setting up another semifinal matchup with the Mate 1 Tigers. The Wonders had embarrassed the defending champions in the first week of the season, but since then, Mate 1 had reeled off 9 victories in a row, including 2 impressive playoff wins of its own. Ceredo-Kenova would win the toss and receive the opening kickoff, putting its high-octane offense on the field first. But the Tigers' defense was up to the task, forcing the Wonders into a 3-and-out. Mate 1 was forced to punt on its first possession as well, and a game where fans were expecting offensive fireworks was proving instead to be a hard-hitting defensive struggle.
I was running, you know, getting hit. We weren't getting much with me. Dale was running. We weren't getting a whole lot of yardage with our offense.
It was close. Into the second quarter, it was 0-0. We just kind of traded possessions.
It would be a defensive play that would finally put points on the board. The Tigers' offense had moved the ball to midfield with just over 4 minutes to play in the first half. The Mate 1 quarterback faked the handoff and attempted to get the edge of the CK defense on a keeper. As he crossed the line of scrimmage, he was met by CK defensive lineman Ben Brewer and linebacker Eric Sparks. The collision forced the football free, and it was scooped up by the Wonders cornerback Bub Taylor, who raced down the sideline for the game's first touchdown.
That was the most important play of the year. He rolled to the right, and I was over there, and I was just covering my route, and they hit him. Boom. Ball pops out. It's laying on the ground. A million thoughts going through my head at the time, and I picked the ball up, and I just took off, and luckily, there was no one there to catch me, and that was the only touchdown I scored that game.
Bub picks it up, runs it in. I'll throw a 2-point conversion pass to Travis James. We're up 8-0 going into halftime.
In the second half, Ceredo-Kenova's defense continued to be relentless, and its offense finally found its footing. After forcing Mate 1 into a punt on the opening possession of the third quarter, the Wonders' offense marched down the field in just 4 plays as Dale Billum capped off the drive with a 19-yard touchdown run. The Wonders would overpower the Tigers the rest of the game, cruising to a 30-0 victory and a trip to Wheeling, West Virginia for the state championship game.
Another shutout in the semifinals. This time the game was at CK. You remember that game in '93 was down at Mate 1. Tough place to win, tough to get to. But CK had the home games, and Mate 1 had to make 2 trips to Kenova that year, and it was a little bit too much for them. But again, CK's talent level, and you got to remember that we're talking close to Thanksgiving here, mid-November, late November, and this CK team was peaking at the right time.
It doesn't get any bigger. High school football is pretty big. We were pumped, you know. There's no better feeling. You can't describe it.
All the way through. It would be Little League baseball, Little League basketball. We played in title games throughout our life. And So, but just thinking about what we just accomplished was pretty major, just especially for the community and what we'd been through since '83, and not a lot of playoff wins, and then here we are going back, and it felt pretty good.
The state championship game pitted a pair of undefeated teams against each other as both Ceredo-Kenova and Valley Wetzel entered the game a perfect 13-0. The Lumberjacks, coached by the legendary Tom West, had lost in the title game the year before and entered the '94 season on the same mission as the Wonders: to take care of unfinished business.
I believe they called it the meeting of the unbeatens, and Valley Wetzel was on the news, and they were talking about how bad they were going to beat us.
So they were 13-0 coming in. They had TV commercials that we saw on TV. The coaches showed us. All of them with sunglasses on. They called themselves the Bad Boys.
Leading up to the game that week, I don't think we focused as much on them as we just did ourselves. Obviously, we had some film. I kind of realized how important the game was when, I was nursing some rib stuff from the week before, and I came in to get some kind of treatment for it, and I walk in there, and Coach Hardwick's sitting with Coach Craycraft, and they were kind of looking at some film of Valley Wetzel, and it kind of set in like, hey, we're bringing in the big dogs for this game.
And they had played in the state championship the year before against Matewan, and it was a dogfight with them in Matewan. So we had prepared. We were ready. I'm sure they were ready too.
We welcome you one and all to Wheeling, West Virginia for the state Class A football championship game between the Valley Lumberjacks and the Wonders of Ceredo-Kenova. Hello again, everybody. I'm George Kellis, along with Coach Ty Fleming. And I think one of the questions that I need to ask a former football coach, is there such a thing as an unbeatable football team? There seems to be a perception that CK is the closest thing that you'll ever see to that.
If there was, you wouldn't play the game, George. Of course not. They have to go out and prove it on the field. And that's why we're here tonight, to find out if they are as unbeatable as everybody around the state of West Virginia says that they are.
It rolls back around. Kevin Ingold boots it away for the Valley Lumberjacks. It's taken inside.
The Wonders received the opening kickoff, and for a couple of plays, it looked like the Lumberjacks were a worthy challenger.
Billum, as he tries to make the outside break right here. You'll see him coming to your screen, folks, and all of a sudden, there are white shirts everywhere. Great team pursuit, bringing up third.
They had the Wonders facing a long third down when Bub Taylor took a handoff from Chris Ball. It looked as if Valley Wetzel had Taylor hemmed up in the backfield, but somehow the shifty tailback made a couple of would-be tacklers miss and skirted down the far side of the field for a long gain and a first down.
33-yard line. Bub Taylor was hemmed in and eluded tacklers. And here you see him coming. Good lead blocking out there.
Missed tackle there. All right, now the Lumberjacks, they just get themselves too congested inside. No one kept the outside containment.
Now you've got linemen out there trying to chase down one of the state's best backs.
The Lumberjacks held strong for the next 3 plays, forcing the Wonders into a fourth down decision from the 28-yard line. Coach Don Money elected to go for it, and once again Taylor delivered with a 13-yard gain.
He is finally tripped up at about the 15-yard line by Joey Barker.
On the next play, Ceredo-Kenova would strike first on a touchdown scamper by Dale Billum. Taylor added the 2-point conversion, and the Wonders took an 8-0 lead.
Time to take a break. We'll see what Valley can do when we come right back.
I remember me and Eric kind of always ran out in the back. Me, Eric, and Bub, we just kind of ran out in the back of the line. And we ran out and seen their fans and their crowd, just the size. And we just had these eyes like, man, there's a lot of people here. There were going to be like 8,000 people there that night for that game.
Everybody's nervous, you're playing a 14-0 team. So you think that they're just going to be at least as good as you. And first quarter, we knew that this is like, are you really? This is who we're playing?
On the ensuing possession, the Valley offense tried to answer by getting the ball into the hands of 1,200-yard rusher and all-state running back Sean Yoho. But Yoho and the Lumberjack offense found itself swallowed up by a sea of green jerseys and were forced to punt the ball back to the Wonders after just 3 plays. The CK offense quickly got to work as fullback Eric Sparks got loose for a big gain on first down.
Eric Sparks all the way.
But the Lumberjacks defense responded, bowing their backs and forcing the Wonders into a second consecutive fourth down decision. Once again, the Wonders elected to go for it, and this time quarterback Chris Ball found his tight end Travis Jenkins for a first down to keep the drive alive. 2 plays later, Taylor would tap dance down the sidelines and into the end zone for a touchdown. From there, the route was on.
We come out first drive, we score, hit Travis with a pass to kind of keep a drive going. We score again.
One thing that I do remember is they were not very balanced. You know, we talked about CK being a balanced team, could throw and run the ball. Valley Wetzel was very run. And when they went against Lace Hardwick's defense, it was like running into a stone wall.
There's one play in particular in that state championship game. They ran their halfback out in motion. Travis Jenkins was the defensive tackle beside me. I almost didn't beat him to the tackle. I think I tackled him for a 6, 8, 10-yard loss. I remember being asked about it and said, how did you know that was going to happen? I said, that wasn't me. I said, that was Coach Hardwick. I said, I've been waiting for that play all game. So we were well coached and did a lot of film review, and we knew everything Valley Wetzel had, and we were ready for it.
Valley Wetzel had no answer for the CK offensive attack, and the Wonders continued to pile up the points. Meanwhile, the CK defense, which had been perhaps even better than its offense all season long, put together another shutout.
Football at the 29, and again it's Valley in a stack eye. The fake to the up back, loss of yardage. Yes, that's down in 2.
The commanding lead gave the Wonders coaches a chance to pull each senior off the field to a raucous applause from the CK faithful.
We got a young man from Tyler down. There it goes now. I thought he would wind it up.
Now it's over.
When the clock finally struck 0, Ceredo-Kenova had delivered the school's 12th state title in unprecedented fashion, steamrolling the Lumberjacks 44-0, capping off a perfect season at 14-0.
And the Valley Lumberjacks disheartened on the other sideline, but I tell you what, they have nothing to hang their heads about. Coming into this ball game 13 and over, they just met a buzzsaw tonight.
By the end of the third quarter, it was kind of out of hand, and I remember we subbed out. And one of our coaches said, Coach Money, why aren't you letting these kids play? It's the last game of the season. And I said, no, we're gonna sub out. So we got a chance to get all of our kids in that state championship game.
We did it with respect. I mean, you give Don Money a lot of credit. He realized other teams prepared all week. He didn't embarrass those kids. To be honest, when we scored twice, it was over. And I think I've never been around something where we knew it and the team across from us knew it was done. It's just amazing.
And I think they did have some injuries that night. And maybe they weren't as good as they maybe could have been, but man, it was a pretty dominating performance by us.
Looking at the sidelines, I could look back and see the sidelines was packed from and Wheeling. So it's not just right down the road. It's a trip. Everybody went. Everybody enjoyed themselves. The band played louder. The cheerleaders cheered louder. The majorettes twirled better. I don't know, but we were all fortunate to have each other and to win a championship.
Well, there you see the final score, and you see the Class A champions celebrating and shaking hands out on the field. They will be certainly remembered as one of the all-time great football teams in Class A football in West Virginia.
They will.
People are going to look back and think back 10 or 15 years from now, and I know a lot of folks are going to say, you know, when talking about some of the all-time great teams, do you remember that CK team back in 1994? Because they cruised through a 14-0.
The 1994 state title would prove to be the school's final championship in a storied history of gridiron success. Just a few years later, in the spring of 1998, Ceredo-Kenova would close its doors for good as the school would be part of a consolidation to form Spring Valley High School. Today, 30 years later, many across the state regard the '94 Wonders as not only one of the greatest teams in single-A history, but one of the most dominant football teams in West Virginia history, defeating its opponents by an average margin of victory of 32 points per game.
The complete dedication was amazing. It was a great place to grow up. It was a great place to be a part of, to be a Ceredo or a Kenova resident and be rooting on the Wonders in those glory years. And that was what 1994 brought back, because I know a lot of us that thought that it was gone forever. Well, Coach Money and those guys brought that back, and it was special again.
We were able to remind the city, the state of who Ceredo-Kenova was, and we brought respect back to the city, the town, the high school, the football program by what we did. I really feel like if you really know anything about West Virginia football, if you can't not talk about Ceredo-Kenova Wonders.
I think that, the weight room was where it started. It ended in Wheeling, and it ended with a bang. I mean, 44-0 is very impressive. You don't see that very often in state title games, no matter what state you're in or what class you're in. It was a total dominating effort, and I think looking back to, some of those guys, especially those linemen, just hitting the weights, Coach Money, setting the example, and Coach Fletcher in there, kind of pushing those guys was where it all started.
Just being a piece of history for this town. I guarantee you, even 30 years from now, everybody will remember it, what we did and what we accomplished. And I know that there was great teams before us for CK, but I truly believe that we were the best one. I truly believe it.
Looking back on it, I see how special it was. And when you watch a movie like Friday Night Lights, I look over at my wife and I'm like, I lived this life.
As if being perfect on the football field wasn't enough, just a few months after the championship victory in Wheeling, several members of the Wonders football team helped the school capture the 1995 baseball state title as well.